Welcome back at WNST, Taos, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively merging the streams of everything we're doing on the sports side and what Luke does at Owings Mills and the Orioles and the Terps and historic WNST Classic, as well as all of our new stuff that I do with my next guest's father, who is sort of my uncle's cousin's brother's mother from another brother from Catonsville in the 21228. At some point, we'll get together over at El Guapo and State Fair. And I don't know if you know this, but Franco's is going to be sponsoring us, which means I get meatballs as well. I'm very appreciative for all that. But, of course, Mohler and Gary Realty. And that's the part where Don acts like he has something to do with Mohler and Gary Realty. The truth is, it's Jeff who's out humping houses, buying, selling, doing all of that, usually with a mask on. We welcome Jeff Mohler back on via Zoom, and we're going to get you a professional mic next time so your mom and dad are proud of you. How you doing, man?
Great. How are you?
Well, I'd be a whole lot better if the Ravens were at 3-0, but, we all evaluate ourselves, right? Like,
right.
COVID has forced all of us to try new ways to sell houses and educate our children and entertain ourselves and all of that. Certainly not much has changed for the Ravens versus the Chiefs on Monday night. And if anything, the Ravens feel like they're going in the wrong direction in this rivalry that's not a rivalry yet.
Right. Well, I think the concerning part is it's the big games. And Nestor, it just feels to me that when they're playing the Chiefs, or even when they played the Titans in the playoffs last year, or the playoff game the year before that they're almost trying too hard. They get away from what they do really well. It's like they're trying to out-Chiefs the Chiefs when they play them. They don't look the same. The schemes don't look the same. And it looks like you see the body language from Lamar, more negative body language coming out of him. They're just playing really tight. And I don't know. That's something that they're going to have to fix, because this snowball is going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger until they learn how to conquer these problems that they're having in these big games, because it was just a beatdown last night on all fronts. And that's demoralizing. And the concerning part is, what is this going to do to them moving forward? Is this going to derail their season? And this is where the leadership of Lamar and John Harbaugh will come into play.
Well, and for the deep thinker and the Tony Robbins guy in you said body language for Lamar. And far be it for me to evaluate, a guy was 14-2 last year and a guy that runs. But there is something for any of us, and I've had to learn this lesson in life many, many times as a confident young man, as I'm sure you were very aware I was, that when things go wrong, when things are bad, when things are at their worst, when they tell you your wife has cancer and you're sitting there looking at a doctor and you're like, now what do I do, right? And for Lamar, things have gone right a lot in Lamar's life, right? Like, Lamar has been the best of the best every time he walks on the field. Things didn't always go well at Louisville, but there's a Heisman, and things certainly did not go well on draft night, but then he gets drafted. He winds up in this great situation, but there is something about handling adversity that all of us have had to face, and I'm not 21 or 22 anymore, but COVID, life's challenges, and to see the pounding of the sort of the sophomoric part of all of that we were all like, oh yeah, we were 22 once. But that is not an effective strategy for success generally. And I know all of the grief that Joe Flacco took about throwing an interception and not throwing a pity party for himself after he did it, that we won a lot of games and had a lot of comeback and had a lot of cool in Foxborough when things don't go well. Lamar hasn't dealt well with things when things haven't gone well, because things have gone really, really well about 92% of the time, because that's how often they win. And when they win, they're winning 45-6. So this whole notion in this league that if you're going to make it long term, you're going to be losing 13-3 at home. You're going to be losing 13-3 at home in the middle of a plague where there's no fans. And my wife and you and your dad Pat aren't up there screaming at Mahomes on third and six. That there's going to be a long career for him, given how good he is at this. And he will be judged, especially when he gets on teams that aren't as good as this, where when you're behind, what happens? What happens when you're behind? And Mahomes has answered that bell, and so is Brady and Manning and Breeze and all these guys. And for Lamar, it's come a little easier because he's so good. And then when things go wrong, I need to see him bring a team back from 10 points down. And you know what, Jeff? It's probably not going to be against the Washington football team this week or against the Bengals next week, right? Like, I don't know where that test is going to come, but I want to see him handle adversity, and I want to see him handle it better than he did on Monday night.
Yeah, and that's part of his game that that he's going to have to work on. And the one thing that you hear about Lamar is how hard of a worker he is. So that's not a question mark. The question is, this is a part of his game, the mental part that he's really going to have to start to hone in on, because when you haven't brought your team from behind ever in your career, you're 0-6 when you're trailing at halftime. That's a problem. That's something that he's going to have to get over. Look, Mahomes throws 4 touchdown passes. Well, Lamar missed. He could have thrown 4 touchdown passes last night too, but he had a drop by Andrews, and he missed Hollywood twice. So you have these moments where he's certainly capable of making these big plays, but there is something that is literally holding him back, and that positive mindset and that belief in yourself that you're going to be able to bring your team back and you're going to be able to win playoff games and you're going to be able to knock off the Chiefs. Those are big moments that he's going to have to figure out, and he's going to have to get over that hump, because until he does, it's just going to be this big weight on his shoulders. And you can just sense it every time that we have these big games. You can just see it. His body language is just different, and the play calling is just different. So I think it's not just Lamar. I think it's the play calling as well, that these guys are pressing a little bit too much and they get away from what they do best. And that's the most frustrating thing to watch is, as a Ravens fan, is, they're almost, unrecognizable in parts of these games until, hey, the second half starts and the other team lets down a little bit and things look a little bit better, but they have to be better prepared from the top down.
Well, I said in the early part of this week, the scoreboard watching, what the score is and how much time's on the clock and all of that, it was 13-3. And one of the things, and I'll give Luke a lot of credit, Luke picked against the Ravens this week, and he picked against the Ravens because he was worried about the middle of the field and defensively. And then what happens to the Ravens when this happens? And to your point, whether it's 13-3, 23-3, whether you're winning or whether you're losing, the Ravens' best play is to run the football. And that's what they're built to do. All of this, can Lamar stand in and deliver, and can he throw? Yeah, he does all of that a lot better when he's up 14 points, and we've seen this. But running the football, that should not take a minute off. It shouldn't take a play off. The whole, can we do this after Marshall Yanda, how all of that sets up everything else that you want to do. But when they're going to turn Lamar into a pocket passer because they're down 10 points or 30, and they're going to play differently, that is disconcerting. And in the aftermath of the game, for Lamar to be talking about kryptonite, talking about the Tennessee game again, right, and what those teams did, you know what? It's exactly what they're going to do if they're capable of doing that. There's going to be some defenses that aren't capable of doing that, or some tacticians. You think Bill Belichick's going to have a scheme? I don't know if he's going to have the horse for the course, but he's going to have a scheme waiting for them, right? And all of the shrewd coordinators are, and on all of the, especially the teams that have a back 8-9, where there's some depth in their linebacking core and their safety core specifically, because they're not as worried about their cornerbacks because they don't think Lamar's going to go up top. It's not what they want to do in a game. But if you can match them in the box and you can force them to do things that create turnovers, there's getting to be a book on beating Lamar now, and Lamar knows it. Now, to your point, how do you adjust?
Right, and that's something that it's almost like they're trying to adjust before the game even starts. You had Anthony Lynn come in with the Chargers and took away the run, and Lamar really struggled. They didn't have an answer to that. Fans were calling for Joe Flacco to come in that game, and then the Tennessee Titans, they have a game plan. The Chiefs have a game plan, and it seems like every time that the Ravens come out and the coaching staff has this game plan, that they're actually trying to adjust before the game even starts. And I'm always a believer in do what you do well. Do what you do well and make the other guys stop you, because Lamar has gotten better throwing the football, but he's not you got to set that up with the run. The first drive, they go right down the field, Nestor, running the football, and then they get away from it. So, again, I think the question comes not just from Lamar, but from the coaching staff as well. You know, they have to look at this game tape and figure out what it is that they're doing that's not working. And then they have bigger problems too, Nestor. Look, they don't have a pass rusher. They just don't have one. And Judon is having a really, really rough year. Bowser, it just isn't going to be that guy. They don't have a pass rusher on this team. So Wink's trying to dial up all these blitzes. And when you're playing a good quarterback like Mahomes, he's going to see that a mile away and just pick you apart, which is what happened last night. So I think they have some personnel issues as well. That, you know, when you have these tough games, when you want to win in the playoffs, you got to play great defense and you have to be able to run the football. The Ravens know that, but right now it's really hard to play great defense when you don't have that edge rusher that can just win the one-on-one matchup. And they're missing it. They have to blitz to get pressure. And when you play the great quarterbacks that you're going to see in the playoffs, they're going to expose that.
He is Jeff Mohler. He is Mohler and Gary Realty. We talk about him a lot because his dad's on a lot. Of course, former Baltimore County Executive Don Mohler, our partner here, as we merge WNST.net, now 22 and a half years of sports radio with the new Baltimore Positive brand that we put together about 2 years ago. The new website will be taking place this week. The merger will be taking place, and you'll see the Mohler and Gary bow tie on Dad Don. You know, for where the market is in real estate, where you are, and kids in school. I mean, I've had you on a couple times during COVID. I remember the first time you and your wife, you guys were getting gray, and kids and education and jobs and all what your wife does for training and all this stuff. 6 months into this and where we are, certainly the work that you do, the real estate side, that's been sort of an unintended consequence of COVID, right? That the real estate market's been a little hotter than maybe anybody would have thought during a plague.
Yeah, no, when this started, Nestor, it was
how am I ever going to sell a house again, right?
Yeah,
right?
Okay, I better buckle down and get creative here. And what I didn't expect is I didn't expect the market to take off the way that it did. And it's been 2006 like, you know, that's been that crazy out there. And I guess with the rates being so low and those who didn't lose their job, it's certainly an opportunity to go out and find that house that you can now afford because rates were below 3. And you have lenders and appraisers that are just, and title companies that are just extremely busy because of all the refinances and purchases. So the real estate market has really been strong unexpectedly. And hopefully, you know, in real estate, you never know what's around the corner. You know, this was an unexpected plus for us, for sure. But, you know, we just have to see what happens moving forward. But it is a great time to buy. The rates are fantastically low. So I would urge any of your listeners who are out there, if they're looking for a home in the Baltimore metro area, just reach out to me. You can reach me at MohlerandGary.com. You can make a request for an appointment right online. It's very simple. And I can find homes. We work everywhere in the Baltimore metro area, Anne Arundel County, Baltimore County, Howard County, Baltimore City, Carroll County, even Hartford County. So we're here to help. We are 5-star rated on Google. I'd urge your listeners or viewers to go to Google and just look up Mohler and Gary Realtors, and you can read our reviews. And you can see what people are saying about us.
I got your website up right now. If anybody's watching that, some of these places I can't afford. Some of them are like, hey, man, maybe I move in there. And, you know, I famously a couple years ago listed my place. Nobody walked through it. So you're telling me this is the time that maybe you and I should be getting together and filling out paperwork is what you're telling me, huh?
That's a great time, Nestor. Absolutely.
That's a nice kitchen there. Can I move? Is that your kitchen? I want to move in there.
Well, I would say, Nestor, I would say that if anybody knew that it was your house, that's a selling point, right? I mean, this is the home of Nestor Aparicio and Jen Aparicio. That's a selling point. That thing's got to fly right off the market.
Yeah, let's go get it. The tub we sit in, absolutely. He is Jeff Mohler. You can find him at MohlerandGary.com. And, of course, Don and I talk about him all the time and about Baltimore Positive. You know, for where the Ravens are and this city, and I want to talk a little bit about this, give a little oxygen to this, because I know we're going to get on to the Washington football team, and I could talk to you about our childhood, your childhood without I mean, you don't even really remember the Colts, I don't think, right? So, I mean, you're a little bit on on the other end of that, I had the Colts and you had a bunch of nothing and the Ravens are all you know. Monday night, this huge game's in town. We're in the middle of this plague, right? You know, sports, the business of sports sucks so bad that I'm moving my business to more than sports because I don't believe it's sustainable. You and I go back and forth with brass knuckles on about whether the Orioles will be here 10 years from now or whether they'll be in Nashville. I'm not willing to bet my life that when I'm 62, they'll be here. So, you know, I've moved all this around, but Jen and I went for a walk. 5 after 5, she gets off. She's like, it's beautiful out. You know, if there were no plague, we would be over drinking, tailgating. I'd be with Jimmy. We'd be having lamb chops right now, watching the sunset, listening to AC/DC or Tom Petty or whatever. It'd be a big night. You would be down. We'd all be high-fiving. We'd be giving Patrick Mahomes the middle finger. You know, I would have been with you. I mean, we've spent – this would have been a night we would have been together, right? Turns out it was okay, right? Turns out we saved some money, the game's – but in that moment, we're walking through downtown. We're like, all right, let's make a new tradition tonight. Well, you know, we go to all the Ravens games, home and away, all over the continent, all over the planet. And I said, Jen's like, let's just get a beer and let's just go for a walk, see what we find. We'll go into a bus. There'll be a bar. There'll be somebody outside. Somebody will have a guitar player. You know, there'll be something going on. Jeff, other than the Goodyear blimp, you never, ever would have known it was a game. We walked around for an hour and a half. It rained. I tripped on one of those things and busted my arm open. See, I'm bleeding up in here. I cut myself open. And there was a rainbow, but there were no people. There was nowhere like we were going to like sit down and like see other there were no Ravens fans out on the streets on a Monday night football game at 6:30 on a home game night. And it really like jarred me to, oh my God. You know, this was the most, everything's glaring. The fact that everything's shut down, it sucks. We've had a mask on. I get all of that. But to see Baltimore, what it looked like the Colts had left town again. You know what I mean? Like there was no game. And, man, that was a really, really frightening little thing even before the game started for me on Monday night about how we got to get this back. We got to keep the baseball. We got to get this back because this is affecting so much in our lives.
Yeah, well, and it is. And, you know, we went through that period, Nestor, where we didn't have any sports at all. And that was brutal in the beginning of the pandemic. And now we have it back. But now it's, you know, we have it back, but we can't be there. And you do have to wonder, how is this impacting the players? You know, the home field advantage for the Ravens is huge. It's one of the best, if not the best in the NFL. And you finally, and when we know that the Ravens have just had very few Monday night football games over the past few years, and now we finally get one, but we can't go because of the pandemic. So you have to think, you know, how is this impacting the players? This place should be rocking, should be rowdy. Now, granted, it didn't help them too much in the playoffs last year against the Titans when it was the stadium was off the hook. But you got to think that also plays a role in these games for them. That this is national television. This is Monday night. Baltimore hasn't had one of these in a long time. And you run out of that tunnel and there's nothing. You have 250 fans that are your family members, and it's just different. And you have to kind of get over that mental hurdle as well. I think a lot of this is just mental, and you made the Tony Robbins point, but there is some psychology involved in this season, and it's going to be who's the best run organization, who has put that mental training in to be able to handle these tough times. This is not just about football. This is about what's going on outside the stadium as well, as you mentioned. And what teams and what personnel is going to be able
They felt like they lacked the energy. They felt like they walked through downtown like I did, right? Literally. Yeah. They sat in a hotel all day Monday in an empty city, rode empty buses into an empty stadium, rolled in, the lights went on, the bombs went off, and then Patrick Mahomes showed up. Then you got to go beat, you know, and it really did feel like, I'm not saying it would have been different had we been there, but the lack of energy was jarring for me as a citizen, a business owner, a prideful Baltimorean, a fan, all of that. You know, as someone that's drank that in since this team came here and moved downtown in 1998, someone that's lived downtown since 2003 and used to watch Brian Billick, you know, my partner here on behalf of Living Class, walk by and walk over the bridge. All of that was missing. Yet the game was there, the lights were there, the bombs went off, the blimp was there, And, then the team fell flat. And I think that, to your point, there is some evaluation needs to go on about bring your own energy that Calais Campbell talked about 2 weeks ago.
Right. And I think, another guy that we haven't talked about, Nestor, is Mark Andrews. We talk about Lamar about how he's struggling in these big games. Well, wow, in that Tennessee Titan game, you remember, that drive where he hits Mark Andrews over the middle. Had Mark Andrews caught that ball, it's a different ball game. Ball goes through his hands. It's an interception. And it was over from that point. Last night, pretty similar. I mean, he hits Mark Andrews in the end zone. That ball's got to be caught for a touchdown. Earlier in the game, he hits him over the middle. Ball hits both of his hands, and he can't come up with it in big plays. So it's not just Lamar that has some of these big game issues. Mark Andrews, who is his number one target without question, also has big game issues. So that's concerning. You can't have your two most important offensive players not show up and play well in big games. These guys got to get it together, or else this is going to be a recurring theme. He's only 23 years old, so he's got time to fix it. But this is something organization-wise that they're going to have to figure out. And again, it's not just Lamar. He's the quarterback. That's who we're focusing on, but you got to look at his weapons as well, and they got to make plays for him.
Chiefs beat the Ravens, and it wasn't close. We're on to the Washington football team. I promise to try not to say the R word too much this week. I don't have to worry about that. Did you hate the Washington football team growing up, Jeff?
No. I didn't hate them. I was a Houston Oiler fan because I liked their helmets, and I didn't have anybody else to root for, so that's how I became an Oiler fan. So I've only ever really hated the Steelers.
My Chicken Palooza shirt's in Oiler colors when I wear my Chicken Palooza shirt. So yes, so if it's for Rofo, it's all good. Well, look, I had a deep, dark distance from the Redskins. I did not like the Redskins. I didn't like them being on my TV. I didn't like that they were keeping the Colts, memory alive for our community by pumping their games in here. I didn't like any of it, and it's been wild watching the demise of the former Jack Kent Cook organization where you couldn't get tickets and waiting lists and all that. And all I know is we better beat them this week. And I hope RG3 comes in and spikes the ball too. How about that? Jeff, take care of yourself, man. We'll send everybody out to Mohler and Gary, and we'll get you on a little more often. I appreciate you, man.
Hey, man, thanks a lot for having me on. I appreciate it.
You got it. Jeff Mohler, you can find him at Mohler and Gary Realty. You need to sell a home. And, of course, Don Mohler, my partner, always here, now always on the website at BaltimorePositive.com as we're merging the streams between WNST.net, the old world, and the new world. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore positive.